What's up, everyone? You're listening to the RAS Project. My name is Ivan Temelkov. I'm your host, and this is where we get 100% real, raw, and unfiltered. If you're looking for your typical conventional podcast, you're in the wrong fucking place. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited for today's episode because I have a special guest, a fellow Arte sister who I'm excited to have on the show. But before we jump in with our special guest, I want to remind you that if this is your first time listening to the RAS Project, please know that this is a podcast about entrepreneurship, personal development, family, tech, and marketing. It's always 100% real, raw, and unfiltered talk. You can always tune in for life-changing advice and influential guests, such as my special guest today, none other than Elizabeth Cantu, who spent 15 years as a nurse, mostly in emergency room and trauma, did leadership and worked closely with executive leadership. And then in 2016, she turned into a transformation coach. So, hi, Elizabeth. How are you? Thank you for jumping on.
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Ivan.
Awesome. So, okay, let's start off with, me and you have been chatting for a little while, ever since I joined Arte. I've had really good synergy. I know you shared a little bit about your story. I was like, fuck, this is amazing. And this is exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because one of the things I admire the most about people is their story. And the people who are not afraid to share their story, because there's a lot of people out there who are afraid to share their story because they're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of how people are going to perceive them and say, well, you have a very troubled past. So I kind of operate in a different world. So we're not necessarily going to be friends or, do business together. So let's start off with, tell us a little bit about your background and your story.
Geez, how far do you want to go back?
Well, let's go. I mean, I know that when me and you chatted, initially, you were telling me about all these experiences, and I know you have a lot. So let's go back maybe, 10 years, right? Let's go back 10 years.
So I had, I'd been working in a trauma center for, my gosh, since 2007, having a great time. First starting out as a trauma nurse, you're having so much fun. You're just like, yes, this is awesome. You're going to work, you're kicking ass, you're learning, you're saving people's lives. It is seriously the most fulfilling, amazing feeling ever. And I think it can also get very addicting too. Mm-hmm. When you're there and you're seeing people dying and you're helping them and you're in this crew with people. The camaraderie in the emergency department is like no other that I've ever worked at, ever. You're relying on these people to help each other save lives. So you definitely build this bond and this trust with one another. But the other thing that also ends up happening is you become very disassociated with, you have to become a different person to be able to deal with the things that you see there. And you have to get really tough. I started nursing because I love people so much. And after a while, what started happening working as a trauma nurse, you get bullied and people talk shit to you. If you are crying or something's really affecting mm-hmm. you have a job to do. You don't have time to sit around and be emotional about stuff. And that can wear on you. It wears on you big time. And so what ends up happening is, how do you, if you can't discuss the most terrible thing that you just saw today with your coworkers, how the hell are you going to talk to your husband about it when you get home?
Right.
My husband, he did not understand. I would, I'd cry. I after my shift, sometimes I'd get in my car, I'd cry all the way home, and then I'd cry myself to sleep. And, we couldn't have that conversation. How am I supposed to tell him? I just saw a 7-year-old that was drug under a car for 30 feet.
Well, not now, just to jump in real quick. I remember when, me and you had a conversation first, and you were talking about some of these traumatic experiences that really warped the lives of a lot of people. I will tell you this, personally, I can relate because my wife worked in the NICU for a long time. And even though it was primarily with infants, principally it's similar to what you were explaining, right? It's like, how do you come home after you've witnessed a traumatic experience? How do you not allow that affect you as a human being? Because like, you were there, you did what you could, but sometimes doing what you could is not enough, because for all we know, all of our days are numbered, and some people's lives end sooner than others. And so, interesting you said that. That's why I wanted to jump in, is because, first of all, huge amount of appreciation for what you did as a nurse. Huge. I mean, and it just goes to show your level of unconditional commitment to the betterment of other people's lives. There's not a lot of people on this planet, honestly, that do that. I mean, they'll say that they want to help people, but like, I think you as a nurse, you really stepped up to the plate and said, you know what, I'm going to do everything I can. So, and I know that obviously affects a marriage, absolutely, which I think is where you were going, right?
Yeah, no, it was bad. It started to become really, like I told you, you develop this bond with your people at work. And so that's who you go to constantly. But you also have to create a different person. You have to be a different person when you're there because of the things that you're seeing. So sometimes what happens is you forget to take that hat off, and you're that person even when you get home. And that's what started creating kind of some problems for us, because, here I am, this badass nurse at work. Critical traumas are coming in. You've got, working in a level 1 hospital, you have all these residents around. And my first day as a nurse, the charge nurse said, "Hey, Elizabeth, your only job is to make sure that these residents don't kill your patients." So I was like, oh my God, no pressure, no freaking pressure at all. It was some of the scariest stuff, but you have to develop this facade almost for yourself so that you're able to deal with everything that's going on. So you can just be super focused and get shit done. Right. And what happened was I would go home and I'm that way. I mean, I've always been a really hard worker and tenacious and getting things done, but I would go home, and the first thing you do when you get to work is you check the trauma bay. So you're checking, like, is my oxygen working? Is my monitor working? Because if the patient comes in, I don't have time to sit around and see if stuff is working as they're dying. Like, I don't have that time. So what translates is when you get home, you walk in and you're like, oh, the fucking floor hasn't been mopped. There's no fucking dinner on the table. I'm exhausted. Yeah. I've been busting my ass for 12 and a half hours, and like the kids aren't ready for bed. Like you start, you still have that hat on. Even though you don't want to be that way, it's like people's lives have depended on you to be that all day for 12 and a half hours. And you're dealing with freaking psych patients. You're dealing with traumas. You're dealing with family. I mean, there's so much going on there. Yeah. So what ends up happening, and this is, as I lead into my coaching here, what ends up happening is people, they only focus on one area of their life, and that's where they're fucking winning. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I was winning at work because I was a badass, like, saving lives, being part of this, of this team, seeing the coolest shit ever. Like, it was awesome. And, the trauma nurses, ER nurses are, they're like, we're badass, man. We're elite. Like, we are the people that everybody's coming to when everything is falling apart. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think, first of all, you are a fucking badass, to be able to withstand. I'll tell you this, there's not, I mean, I don't give a fuck who you are, but honestly, to have that level of thick skin, to be able to go through 12 hours of havoc and bullshit and like all this stuff that's happening and like literally not go crazy over it. And by the way, do this you did it, for 15 years? Like, that's fucking insane. Like, most people would quit in like 5 minutes and be like, I just don't have the tolerance for this. Like, I can't bear it. It's too traumatic. And you did this for 15 years. So I'll tell you this, you are a fucking badass. I appreciate that very much. And there's a lot of people that get burned out real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe, I am certain 100%, obviously my marriage ended, and,
Mm-hmm.
I was very driven. We're just different people. We were different people. And, I think a lot of it had to do too, like with my job, and just, we're on a different journey, and we met
Sure.
very early. We got married early in our relationship, so we really didn't take the time to get to know each other as well as we should have, probably.
Yeah.
But after my divorce, it was crazy because he was like trying to get into school, and I was supporting him the whole time, and like keeping everything going, working as a nurse, freaking pregnant, working in the ER, like him, applying for school. Like I was doing everything,
Yeah.
and what ended up happening was, when I finally made it to the trauma center, I was so focused on just winning there and being such a badass, like everything started falling apart everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started my journey to self-development. I started listening to Wayne Dyer. I started listening to Louise Hay and Tony Robbins, and that like completely transformed my entire mindset. And so I found myself like seeing people from a different perspective when they came into the ER. It was it was like it changed my whole entire freaking world, honestly. That's what helped me get through my divorce, was all of that self-development, understanding like, oh shit, that's why I was doing what I was doing. Oh my God, like this is why people, when they come into the ER and they're so sick with high blood pressure and hypertension, and they're having strokes and shit, it's because their life is out of whack, and they're having all these emotional issues that they're not dealing with. I didn't understand that when I started as a nurse. I knew some, but you're so focused on just saving lives and looking at things from a Western medical point of view, right?
Yeah.
Like just another pill. Oh, you're having high blood pressure? We need to increase the dose of your medication. You know what I'm saying?
Isn't that fucked up? I mean, in Western medicine, it's like, oh, something's wrong with you. Okay, you need more pills, right? It's like,
Yeah.
one thing that you were saying that I wanted to touch upon, because I think this gets really scrutinized, is marriage. I mean, let's face it, in the United States, over 60% of people are divorced. And I will tell you this, being an Eastern European being divorced once, I can relate but that was like a shame, right? For me, it was a shame because nobody in Eastern Europe gets fucking divorced. It's just, you don't. You're married. My parents have been married almost 40 years. That just does not happen anymore. And largely in part is because people grow apart. They grow apart because your goals change. You grow as a person. And I will tell you this, the reason why the divorce rate is so high in the US is because it's very hard to be in alignment with a person, the same person you see every day, the person you sleep with, share finances with, married to, right? Husband or wife, for decades and decades. It's just impossible because the day and age that we live in, it's so fast paced, it's so disruptive. And anytime people hear divorce, it's like, oh, like immediately puts you at blame, right? Like as if you did something wrong. And so I just want to touch upon that because I think personally, based on what you said, is that you were evolving as a person. Your interests were changing, and your ex-husband did not support that growth. I'll tell you this. That was the same thing with my first marriage, where I can relate. We completely grew apart. And as much as I think I personally wanted to hold it together, it just wasn't going to fucking happen. It just wasn't going to fucking happen no matter what I did. And even though it was somewhat of a traumatic experience, is that, as Tony Robbins says, adversity pushes us into action. So you realize that adversity is happening for a reason, but it's usually after the fact. Because when you're caught up in the moment, like you said, you're very emotional about it. And you're not thinking clearly because you're allowing the emotion to dictate the course of your actions. So what you were saying is, I honestly think is this, that, that was meant to happen for a reason, so you could truly find your real purpose in your calling.
Yeah, you know what? I totally agree with you 100%. And the other thing that I wanted to add to that is, as I was as I was growing and achieving all these goals at work, right? Like I feel like, hell yeah, I'm making shit happen. Like I'm the next, I really wanted to become this MICN, which is a radio nurse. So when the paramedics call, you answer the phone and you're the first one there to give them orders and stuff. It's like, it was the coolest thing. I couldn't wait to have that status. It was something I was working towards.
Sure.
So as I'm achieving all these goals and in line for all these things, I could see like my ex kept getting denied from school, and I started feeling bad. So you know what I started doing? I started slowing down.
Yeah.
I started slowing down. And then I was like, okay, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Let's get you where you want to be. So I started forgetting who I was so that he could achieve his goals. And then I started becoming kind of like this weak little fucking, I don't even know, this weak ass person that I never been.
I think one thing that you said, Elizabeth, right there, is that I think you were starting to feel guilty and responsible for the outcomes that your ex-husband was facing, things that you could not control. And honestly, I will tell you this, as human beings, we do that. I mean, I'll tell you this, I think ever since, especially joining Arte and also aligning with people like you, I've really given that more significant thought, and how I think that us as human beings, we immediately want to accept blame for things that we're not responsible for. Because I think in part that we feel guilty in the way that I think you were feeling guilty that your ex-husband was getting denied from school, and you're like, oh, wait, maybe I should help him. You feel responsible, right? Which is the natural thing that we do, right, as human beings. But there's only so much that you can do in that situation because you did not have control of that situation. You could not control the outcomes. And as a result, what did it do? It forced you to slow down and detract your focus from the things that you wanted to do as a person.
Yeah. And I mean, like it absolutely, that is 100%. I started to feel guilty. Here I am at work, crushing it, saving lives, doing that, doing such an awesome job. And then I come home and it's like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
it was totally different, So, and I think a lot of people do that, especially women that are, here they are, they give up a lot of themselves to help the other person in the relationship, and they end up losing who they are. There's a movie by Wayne Dyer called The Shift. Such an amazing movie, and I would highly recommend that people watch it. Wayne Dyer, The Shift, and it has 3 different scenarios and stories in there that talk about that, how we lose ourselves so many times. And so, after everything went down, Ivan, and here I am, fucking homeless with my 2 kids. Each of us have a bag of clothes after my divorce. I moved all the way to Puerto Rico, came back, and had nothing. Literally had to start over from nothing. Just a bag of fucking clothes and the car that I let my sister hold for me while I was there. Because he had finally got into school there in Puerto Rico. And I didn't want to go. But I felt bad because, again, I wanted him to be able to live out his dream, Yeah. And so coming back and seeing how I totally lost myself. I remember standing outside and the kids were inside the house, and I thought to myself, if anybody asked me what kind of music I like, I wouldn't even know right now. I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like such a stupid thing, but literally that's how much I lost myself in trying to help him that I totally forgot about me.
One thing that I want to share right there that you said that's very important for people to understand, especially there's a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast and watch this podcast. Now, a lot of them are married. A lot of them are divorced also. And I will tell you this, isn't it fucked up in a way of the things that we would do for love? And here's why. In your scenario, you were sacrificing yourself and your dreams so that your ex-husband could fulfill his. I will tell you this could be an ongoing debate. There's a lot of people that will say, you should not sacrifice yourself and your dreams and your goals for nobody. Because You live only once, only once. And do you know how many people, and so one of the reasons I wanted to also to have you on the podcast is because I don't have too many women that come on. And especially after hearing your story, and that's why I wanted you to come on and share a little bit about your story, is that for people to acknowledge the suffering, the sacrifices, and the risks the women like you make so you can fulfill your dreams, right? And that's in part, I think, what makes your story so unique is because all these things with, working as a nurse, helping people, taking a toll on your marriage, growing apart, ended up being homeless, and then really truly finding your purpose. There's a reason it all happened. But I think somewhere along the way, and that's why I said I think it's kind of fucked up, the things that we do for love, is because I can relate to you, especially with my first wife, who I basically paid for everything while she was in school for 4 years. And we were very, very young. And I took that upon myself. Yeah. I took that upon myself willingly. I said, you know what? I'll work my fucking ass off. I'll pay for everything. I'll pay for the mortgage. I'll pay for everything. You just go to school, and my ex-wife was going to school to be a lawyer, basically. Which I'll tell you this: me and someone that's a lawyer just don't fucking jive. let's just put it this way, because
trauma.
It's fucked up. It's fucked up. So there's one reason why that didn't work out. But like, the point I was trying to make is that I think you were the bigger person in this in so many ways, and the fact that you sacrificed and risked so much for love because you truly believed, in your ex-husband, and you wanted him to win. And I will tell you this now: if you were to reflect upon that right now and say to yourself, would I do that again? Would you do that again?
Honestly, fuck no, I wouldn't.
There you go.
Here's the reason why. No, but this is really important. This is the reason why. Okay. Would I go to the extent that I did? Would I have moved my kids? Would I have left my job? Would I have done that? No, I would not have. I would have said, you know what, we really need to figure out a different way for you to be able to achieve your goal, and I'm here to support you. Right. It would have been a different conversation. I believe in a relationship that you are supposed to support each other, but I also believe that there's compromise. And you have to see the bigger picture of what's best for the family also. Because honestly, our kids being 5 and 2 and then moving out of the country to Puerto Rico for me to work at the VA, us not have any support, that's not a smart move for your family. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so there would be things about that I definitely would have done differently.
Yeah.
I'll still be the same supportive person, but there's definitely boundaries that I realized, after all that. I'm grateful for that experience because obviously it helped remind me just how strong I am. It helped show my children that no matter what, you can always rise above adversity. It showed me to be able to have self-love after I went through that whole transformation of self-development, because I didn't really love myself in the beginning.
Right.
I just wanted to, I was doing it for love because I felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. So it was the wrong thing. Even though I wanted to support him, it was coming from the wrong place, honestly.
Yeah. What you were saying right there, I think, so you made a comment earlier that I kind of wanted to bring back to. You were saying, especially women, I think women tend to play the guilt card quite often, because I think it's an emotional reaction, honestly, right? And through the experience that you went through leading up to your coaching and really finding your true purpose, right? And helping other people, especially other women, overcome adversity, whatever that is, whether it's a divorce or a loss or whatever it might be, right? Or homelessness, whatever it might be. But I think that women, you're absolutely right. You made a comment earlier that I think it's not the guilt, it's the victim card that I was going after. Is playing the victim card, because women immediately kind of take it upon that guilt and think that it's, their fault. Now, there's not a lot of women, that do that, but a vast majority do it because, like you said, you risked, you sacrificed because you wanted your ex-husband to succeed, and you basically put your life on hold for him, you know, and that is, you know, that is detrimental. But when you think about it, is on the flip side of that, if that hadn't happened, it actually wouldn't have pushed you over the edge to realize of what your true calling is. And using all that adversity and those bad experiences, you know, to entice you to move forward and do something that you're truly content with, that you feel happier with, because that's what led you to your coaching today, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's crazy because I felt like such an idiot after all that happened. I was like, man, I'm the biggest jackass on the planet. Like, I can't believe I just left everything and did all that for fucking nothing. I was so mad at myself for a long time and pissed at him, you know, for not being honest about some things, because there was definitely some betrayal there too. Before I even left to go to Puerto Rico, I'm like, really? Look, you could have told me before I sold all our shit and left. You know what I'm saying? So, but, you know, after moving through, having my transformation, having some healing, then I started doing that to my patients in the hospital. It's crazy. You know, a lot of the nurses would walk by and they're like, hey, every time I walk by, your patients are crying, dude. What's up?
Yeah.
I'm like, they're just having these transformations because now I've equipped myself with the different tools to help people. And so I'm having these conversations with people, and this was before I even went and got a coaching certification. It's just from listening to Wayne Dyer, reading like Tony Robbins, and then seeing the bigger picture. People are coming in with all these issues, but nobody's asking the real question. What's happened in your life in the last year?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I had a guy that was a young guy who's having chest pain for a year, and no one freaking asked him what had happened in his life 7 months before. Okay. So, I'm sorry, he'd been having chest pain.
Yeah.
And just previous to that, he lost his wife and his 11-month-old daughter in a car accident on her birthday as they were driving to dinner, getting hit by a drunk driver. Like, nobody asked those things, but that's what leads up to these physiological issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, you know, speaking of that, it's funny enough, you know, both of my parents are in their early 60s, and my father's business is very physical related. And not too long ago, I found out that his blood pressure and his cholesterol were through the roof. And I'm like, why are they through the roof? So, like, are you eating right? And he's eating fast food every day and all this, right? This was like, oh my God, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe roughly, when I found out about this, kind of like, you know, a little bit about it. And long story short, you know, the doctor told him, you need to start eating right. You need to start eating better, because you're not going to live to be 65. Literally, because you're putting all this shit in your have been. And that's the problem with us fucking Europeans, is that we eat 5-course meals, like fucking steaks and kebabs and shit. And I mean, it's good, but like, it skyrockets your cholesterol level, right? And his blood pressure is high because of, and my father was like, you know, he didn't took a strong initiative behind this. Like, he didn't. And I literally one day turned around and said, do you want to fucking see your grandkids a little longer? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, think about this for a second, and you don't think that this is serious to go to the doctor and, you know, maybe take a prescription that they tell you, or change your habits, change your lifestyle, because it's for the betterment of you. Nah, it's okay. I'm like, no, you're fucking going to the doctor, like, whether you like it or not. And it's so unfortunate because, like what you just said, people don't understand that the emotional experience that they have, the traumatic experience, correlate to physical pain.
Yeah.
It's self-inflicted, literally. And a lot of people don't understand that. Honestly, I didn't used to understand that for a long time. I used to think that, okay, these traumatic, like similar to what you were going through your divorce, right? As things were like unfolding and all this like shit happens for a reason, and you're like, what the fuck? You know, like, how do I even get here? And then you have guilt and you play the victim card and this, and this, and suddenly you're homeless with a bag and 2 kids. And in your head, you're going, oh, what's happening? But as a result, you're feeling stress. Your body aches. You know, you don't want to do anything. You know, your eating habits change, right? Because you're eating based on emotion, right? That's why people binge, because there's people that literally, I'm glad I never went through this, but I know a lot of people who go through like eating a shit ton of chocolate or eating a shit ton of fast food or drinking.
And drugs. Yeah.
And drugs. And all because they want to cure an emotional pain.
Well, you want to hide it and you go on autopilot, you know? So when I'm here with my 2 kids and I have nowhere to fucking live, it's like,
yeah,
you know, I'm on autopilot. I can't deal with what's happening right now emotionally because I have to get shit done. I have kids that need to be taken care of. I went straight back into that ER mode, you know, like fucking not paying attention, ignoring how I feel, you know, all that stuff, because I had a job to do, and that was to make sure that my kids were taken care of. And that's what people do. That's exactly what people do, especially entrepreneurs and people that are high achievers. You are going to your win, and that is your business. And so people might be extremely successful in their business, and they're spending all their time there. Their fucking family life is falling apart, and their health is shit. They don't take care of themselves. They don't sleep good. They're not managing their time appropriately. They're not getting to the gym. They're not, you know, the doctor tells them something. They're like, oh, fuck off. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just like every other person, you know. That's what happens. And,
right.
You know, the thing is you can't see blood pressure. You can't see a heart attack. You fucking feel it. It comes on because it's the silent killer. People don't understand. Like, you know, when you're stressed out, you've got a lot of stuff going on, you have to make that time to be. See, I like to teach my clients to have an awareness. You know, people talk about life balance. That's bullshit. There is no balance. You need to have an awareness to yourself, your relationships, and your business. Those are the 3 main areas of your life. And when you have an awareness of how you are spiritually, you're taking care of yourself, you know, you're working out, you're feeling good, you're doing your self-development, and then your relationships with your family, with your coworkers, your business associates, and your friends.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the self is at the top of the pyramid, and then you've got your business and your relationships down at the bottom. Because, you know, that's what needs to come first. Because you can't, if you're not in alignment with yourself and aware, you can't be shit for your relationships, and you can't be shit for in your business. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all going to affect each other.
That was actually one of the things that I wanted you to elaborate upon. I'm glad that you did. You kind of took the words out of my mouth on that. So I'm glad that you did. But I got to thinking about something, because I know that you mentioned entrepreneurs and high achievers, and one thing that I've realized is that as an entrepreneur specifically, that my life evolves and my business evolves and grows. Going into 2020, I know it's going to be the best year yet. And the last 2 years have been really, really good. You know, as I've realized that the jig is going to be higher than fucking ever. Like, literally way the fuck up there. And with that comes a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, you know, and I think as an Eastern European, personally, I've never really, like you talked about self-development and relationship. And I will tell you this, is I've also taken, you know, my wife still works a full-time job. And so, you know, she has been my number one supporter. But there's times where, you know, I see that disconnect. Like in the evening, for example, when, you know, I've got a 3.5-year-old and an 18-month-old son and a daughter. So when I pick them up after daycare and we come home, I usually try to like carve out like an hour or 2 of like family time, like to where I'm not fucking glued on my phone, because that's literally the life that I live. And, you know, she'll come home and she'll be like, are you on your laptop again? Are you on your phone again? And like, that's literally what I do for probably 12 to 14 hours a day. Right. And whether it's families here, but what I've realized is that if I don't put forth an emphasis on my relationship, on my marriage, being the best father and husband that I can be, I will never be the best entrepreneur that I can be. Because I think I'm so focused, don't get me wrong, I'm focused on impact and helping other people, right, with my marketing business. But the problem is that I'm so focused on other people's impact, not my own impact in my own life. And when you said high achievers and entrepreneurs, because that's the people that you work with, right, is I've realized that they put more time and emphasis and investment into relationships and self-development, personal development than anything else. And as a result, that creates the snowball effect of being more successful financially, reaching prosperity. And I think that that's probably one of the misconceptions, Elizabeth, in the entrepreneurial world is just that, I'll tell you this, coming from a 9 to 5 in an agency world, a lot of my former bosses were chasing money every day. These were people that were married with kids. Every single fucking day is they chase money. They chase money, like, because they're so worried about covering their overhead, their payroll, some of them would even run $10-15 million companies. So like, imagine the fucking overhead on that. And over a period of like a decade of doing this, you do burn out. You lose motivation. You wake up every day and you feel exhausted. And so I think that what you're doing has a huge importance in the lives of not just entrepreneurs, but anyone who wants, to improve themselves as a whole, as a human being. Because let's face it, we're all human beings. We all fuck up, right? But like being able to mitigate that, that's where I think someone like you comes in, right? Is being able to provide that guidance. Not to mention is that you've had traumatic experiences of your own, with your ex-husband, with your former marriage too, and that has given you real hardcore lessons that you are able to apply and teach to other people.
Oh yeah, I've had it all and lost it all. Had everything I ever wanted, and then realized that it was nothing. And my kids and I, like I said, we had to come from. I had a friend. I have a friend, she's still a friend, but she sent an email out to the church that she went to, and they helped to furnish our whole fucking house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like we literally had nothing. Is so crazy. But, I don't think people understand, you don't understand until sometimes it gets too late,
Yeah.
And like a little fire starts and then that shit takes over real quick in everything in your life. And it's important that people understand that. In order for you to be successful, you have to be aware of everything that's going on.
Right.
You just have to be. And especially in relationships, understanding what your wife's love language is and your kids, and making sure that you're paying attention to that, and I swear to you, the 4 agreements is the biggest. If everybody could live by the 4 agreements, this fucking world would be so amazing. That right there was the key thing that helped change so many things for me, especially working as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Because people's lives are falling apart. They come in and you have no idea what's going on the other side. So to not take things personal. Like if you have not read that book, talking to the viewers here, please, that book is amazing. You need to have that book in your life.
And what was the name of that book one more time?
The 4 Agreements.
The 4 Agreements.
Miguel Ruiz.
Okay. Awesome.
And The Shift. And the movie The Shift. Those are the 2 things that I feel are so huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a good addition. Elizabeth, this conversation could probably be endless. Absolutely enjoyed having you on. And in closing, I want to make sure that other high achievers, other entrepreneurs, other women especially, that may be going through a similar experience that you did, right? And they're kind of seeking guidance, they're really striving towards their purpose. Make sure that they can connect with you. So what is the best way, to connect with you online?
Well, and even men, everybody needs to have that, But my website is elizabethacantu.com. And that is my handle on every social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Elizabeth A. Cantu, Cantu.
Awesome. Elizabeth, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and jamming with me.
Thanks for having me, Ivan.